Retro.
Hey, this is Lauren Mary Kim, and I'm the stunt double for Ahsoka Tano in Clone Wars and the armorer in The Mandalorian. You're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. This is the way.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I am Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And we are privileged to be joined by one of our favorite guests, Mr. Dan Zehr, who you know is a Star Wars author and the host of Coffee with Kenobi. Welcome back, Dan. How you doing?
Hello, friends. I honestly, this is as important as baseball and fireworks and bratwurst on the grill is coming on Podcast Stardust to talk about a segment of a Star Wars film. So now Summer can officially be the capstone here. So thanks so much for having me back on.
Yes,
right.
this
Always
has
a
been a tradition for us to have you in the summer, usually right before school starts back up again.
It's
It's almost
true.
like your
It's
last
true.
hurrah.
Yeah, I typically stay of my teacher friends for these segments for the summer so that I'm not having to worry about them dealing with finals or the start of school and the like. So I'm glad you could make it. This has been fantastic. It's great to always have you here to talk about these movies and get your unique perspective. So this is normally where I say what we're about to talk about. We've already said so. We were talking about The Force Awakens. This is part 7 of our series on that. Before we get into the discussion, though, Jay, and remind everybody where we can be found on social media.
Absolutely. Very conveniently at Podcast Stardust on Instagram and Facebook.
All right. The dish is lying. The signal's boosted to maximum output. The shield is down. We are now broadcasting to the galaxy. So, again, this is part 7 of our discussion of The Force Awakens, and we're going to be talking about the battle on Takodana here in just a minute. But we've been talking to our guests about their experience with this movie to get things started. So, Dan, we got a few questions. Up first is, this is the first movie that came out under the Disney umbrella. And I remember where I was when I first heard that Disney had bought Lucasfilm, was going to start making Star Wars movies, and didn't believe it at first because I thought it was a joke. But where were you when you heard that Disney acquired Lucasfilm and it was going to start producing Star Wars movie again? What do you remember about that announcement?
This was my Kennedy moment. I'm serious. I'm not trying to downplay a real honest tragedy, so I apologize if it sounds that way. But I was in the kitchen. We were, months away from getting married. And Corey texted me. It's like the only time he's ever scooped me, but it's a pretty big scoop. And he said, Disney purchased Lucasfilm and they're making episodes 7, 8, and 9. And I looked around at my soon-to-be wife, and I said, guess what? And I started telling her, and she looked at me. I think she was afraid someone was dying because of my nerves and how excited I was. And I just sat at the table thinking, this is it. This is everything. This is what I've been waiting for. The next day, I think we went and saw Wreck-It Ralph at the movie theater. And on the way to the movie theater, I was listening to Rebel Force Radio, and Steve Sansweet was on. It was still when he was working with Lucasfilm. And he was about to go into a conference call to talk about the big merger and the big change for Lucasfilm. And I remember just drinking in every word. And so when I'm watching this movie, Wreck-It Ralph, of all things, all I could think about was episode 7, 8, and 9. And it consumed me. Like, I was so excited about it because I've always been a massive Disney fan. And I knew that if anybody could take the torch from George Lucas, it would be Disney, because they know how to market and keep their properties alive and breathing. Because at that time, all we had were, parodies, Family Guy and Robot Chicken. And that was just, it was funny, sure, but I wanted more. And boy, did we get it.
Indeed.
Wow. Yeah. That is an incredible story. I love hearing the stories that everybody has about this, because obviously it's a, where were you when kind of thing. And yeah, it's so unique to hear. So cool. So cool. So what was your favorite theory or a bit of hype leading up to the movie's release? So any specific like trailers, rumors, footage, like what do you remember
Well,
about
so when it comes to rumors and theories, as you know, I do not fish in that water. My favorite saying, expectation without regulation equals fan constipation, and I'm always the one who ends up getting gassy about it. And I didn't pay attention to anything. I watched the two trailers, and I didn't do anything beyond that. And this was when Coffee with Kenobi was first kind of taken off and kind of getting a life of its own. So it was a challenge. And unfortunately, I've told this story a few times over the years. The day I was going to see it, because it was the opening day, of course, someone sent me a Facebook message to the show and told me that Kylo Ren was Han Solo and Princess Leia's son, and he kills Han Solo. And I remember where I was for that too. And I just looked down and I texted some of my friends at Lucasfilm, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's not true. Don't worry, don't worry." I think it was true. As it turns out, wait, is it too late to spoil? So that was like probably the worst I've ever been spoiled by something. And it really soured me. I was just so bummed because I was obviously dying to experience this film fresh. But it ended up being just fine, and I absolutely adored the film. For years, I said it was a perfect Star Wars film. I've since softened my opinion there as far as that goes, but fabulous. So I guess to answer your question from 10 minutes ago, because that's how long I've been babbling, I just tried to just drink in the moment, and I tried to steer clear of all of the theories.
Fair enough. Wow, I'm so sorry you got spoiled like that. I had no
That's all
idea.
right.
I remember that. I remember
Yeah.
that when that happened to you, because you posted something about it, I want to say on Facebook or whatever, and we known each other for about a year at that point. Some months earlier, I was on your show discussing an episode of Rebels, and I remember feeling so bad for you that had happened, that someone had spoiled that, because I thought they had posted it like directly on one of your posts on Facebook at the time.
It was a DM. It was a DM, and I think I blocked him.
Oh, good for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
But other than my own experience, the two I remember the most, people who went and saw The Force Awakens, was yours and Alan Voivod's, because of something that happened with one of his sons. Yeah, I just remember that and feeling terrible for you at the time, because I was not deliberately seeking out theories, but if you're on Twitter often enough and social media enough, some of those things just have a way of finding their way to you. And so you hear enough that you're like, well, these all can't be true. So you don't, but they're still kind of in the back of your mind that some of these things could happen. But anyway, neither here nor there.
And honestly, now and I'm very blessed that I get to do some cool stuff, that maybe the best perk is that I don't have to worry about stuff getting spoiled.
That's true. That's true. When you're at the premiere, it's kind of hard to do, right?
There you go.
So was there anything else about your first viewing that stood out to you?
So the first viewing was the first time Coffee with Kenobi did a live show, on a site. And so we did it at our local movie theater, and we had a table set up, and there were a number of other tables that had their own podcasts or radio stations. I was on the news, the local news. And I just remember I remember driving there, and Peyton and I, my oldest, went through a Chick-fil-A drive-through, and I scarfed it down because I knew I had to eat, because I was going to go on the podcast, and I wanted to have a full belly, and I was trying to take care of all the Maslow's hierarchy of needs before I actually.
Yes.
I remember when it started, and it said, I forget, the opening crawl mentions Luke Skywalker. I remember looking at Corey and and just seeing his name, and whole time absolutely riveted to the entire thing. I just remember it was such an experience. The 501st was there in the front of the theater, and there were some people acting out like a lightsaber duel, and there were people in stormtrooper armor, and it was magical. You just, there are some things that just stick out in your mind, and this was more than a Star Wars moment. It's kind of a core memory, just as a fan of popular culture. It was amazing.
That's a
Well
good way to
said.
put it. The
And it's
core,
cool I got to
core
see it with
message.
Corey too, you know, because we had
Yeah.
just started
So
the show.
was that a self-actualization moment then
I kind
on
of
your
think it was.
hierarchy of needs?
I kind
Yeah.
of think it was.
There you
Yes,
go.
I really do. Well done.
Perfect. So, who was your favorite character in The Force Awakens, Dan?
So that's hard because I love this movie. Uh, I do think it's sort of like duh, but the one that stands out to me the most is Han Solo, and not just because I love Harrison Ford and I've always liked that character. He just got a perfect balanced nuance of bravado, humor. It's like a Han Solo's greatest hits, but there's also the maturity there. Harrison his acting is excellent. I think all of the original actors in the prequel or in the sequel trilogy were Oscar level talents as far as Hamill and Harrison goes. Carrie Fisher didn't get to do too much, unfortunately, but he stands out a lot. And I'm also extremely drawn to Kylo Ren because that's a hard that to be like, you know who Pete Myers is? You ever heard of Pete Myers?
That's new.
He was the starting guard for the Chicago Bulls after Michael Jordan retired.
Oh, okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So Kylo Ren could have been Pete Myers, but no, the costume, the helmet, the beautiful voice, Adam Driver's performance, that growling lightsaber, which mirrors sort of the anger within, accompanied by his cracked kyber crystal, are so fantastic. But it's Harrison, it's Han. It's Han. Han's just he steals the show. He really does.
So I'm going to tease you
choice.
for just a second, Dan. It wasn't
Please.
the Millennium Falcon.
Oh boy. No. That. See, Jay has known me for a long time. She knows my opinion on that. And I'm proud to say that I wrote an article on stars.com where I did mention the Falcon is not a character.
I had to tease you.
Yeah, I'm glad. I hope you do it every time.
I live for the moments when you and Corey debate that. But all right.
Oh boy.
All right. Final question before we get into the segment. What is your favorite scene from The Force Awakens?
Wow. I mean, I love sort of the dream sequence that you've already talked about. I really like the sequence when Rey calls Luke's lightsaber to her because it's very Arthurian. You know, the worthy person pulls the sword out of the stone, but in this instance, it's the lightsaber that goes to the worthy person, and it's so beautiful and metaphorical, and it's everything with the ground cracking open, representing the schism in their internal psyches, plus what's going on with the Force in general, the music, just the fact that there's life with trees, but they're dead. I mean, it's very rich. I could write volumes about it because I think it's just such a beautiful sequence. And in a film full of many beautiful sequences, J.J. Abrams is a quite an astute filmmaker, and he's excellent with his visuals, and it really comes to light in that scene.
I think we had Dan on for the wrong segment. We should have saved him for later in the year because I would love to have got it. As a English teacher, I always like it when these things sync up and we get something that's full of metaphor and symbolism or whatever. Not as much in this segment, but I still am looking forward to getting your opinions on this going forward. But hey, like I said, you're usually our midsummer guest on this so that it doesn't interfere with your teaching schedule because I know you're a busy man. So anyway, let's go ahead and get into the segment here. We are talking about the portion of the movie that runs from approximately 1 hour, 11 minutes and 6 seconds to about 1 hour, 22 minutes and 10 seconds. And it starts off with Rey running from Maz Kanata's castle after she's had that experience with the Luke's lightsaber. She stops. She's kind of out of breath. She turns around and sees BB-8 who chirps behind her, kind of like, what are you doing? And then she tells him he has to go back. She's leaving, but he needs to go because he's too important. And then she looks up to see that the First Order is arriving, and she begins running again. I don't know that there's too much that needs to be discussed there, but is there anything out of that brief segment of the movie that stands out to either one of you?
Ladies first.
Well, usually we let our guests go first, but yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much everything that we need to talk about there, other than Ray always hits me as just being so empathetic with BB-8, and the fact that she talks to him as a friend, and she says they'll take care of you. Don't worry about it. They'll take care of you. And so she took the time to get down on his level and look him in his eye, just like you would a young child that you're trying to reassure, and that you're hoping that will listen to what you have to offer. So I just, that always hits me. That's the big thing for me.
That's an excellent point, because that, just like the way you talk to pets or children, or the help, in a restaurant, that shows kind of your integrity in your character. I think what stands out to me in that little section is just the visuals, the ties coming through, the dawn sequence, the lighting on that, is the cinematography on that, if you will, is absolutely stunning, and it takes your breath away. But at the same time, there's horror, because death is approaching and everyone is frightened. Even though this is a crew of pirates and scoundrels and mercenaries and what have you, they still have their own little community, and it's about to be interrupted by a superior force, and that is a scary thing, in spite of the beauty of that shot.
Yeah, because this ends with that shot of the TIE fighters flying against the setting sun or the rising sun. I'm not sure which one it is, which is a scene that they just tried to do again in The Mandalorian and Grogu, only with X-Wings this time around. I mean, okay. But I love that shot. It's absolutely beautiful. I remember it from the trailer when we got to see that as well. But then the film moves on to Maz Kanata's palace. Maz is in the dungeon, the other part of the castle. I don't know if she actually has a dungeon. And she's talking about the Skywalker lightsaber. She mentions that she's had it for ages. And then Han asks the question we all know: how did you get that? And then she says, a good question for another time. And we've never had another time. We've never found out how she came by that lightsaber. And I'm dying to find that out. Anyway, she gives it to Finn and tells him to find her friend. And then the castle begins to rock and shake. And we know the First Order's there. And she says, "So peace, they're here." And just as an aside, Lupita Nyong'o, I just got to see her in the Odyssey this past weekend. And for such a beautiful woman, I wish they could have let her just show up in this movie as she is. Her voice is fantastic too, but
great.
Yeah, but to use her as a CG character, wow. Okay. Anyways, moving on. Dan, what stood out to you here about Maz's interaction and talking about the lightsaber?
I love it because the lightsaber, an ancient mythological weapon. It's more mythological in this film than the majority of the Star Wars films. I mean, it's always a cool, showcase, especially in the original film, and in this one. So I like that there's a lore behind it. It's also a bit paradoxical for me, because when you say it's never been told in the story, I believe that's right. Although for some reason I'm thinking that Charles Soule addressed it in some of the Star Wars comics when he talked about when they did storylines within The Empire Strikes Back. I don't know if it's fully. I don't know that it shows when it ends up in Maz's hands, but that brings me. In fact, I don't think it does at all. But that's what brings me to where this is a paradox. In theory, yes, it would be cool to find out, but this is the pro and the con to everything is canon.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked in the original film, there's so many comments, Clone Wars, blah, blah, blah. It's great to know stuff. I love Clone Wars, don't get me wrong. But sometimes not every story needs to be told. I sort of hope I never find out how Maz Kanata gets that lightsaber, because then we get to tell the stories in our own minds. When the original films came out, there were all these theories about Boba Fett and what's Boba Fett like. And this is before some of the old school expanded universe Mandalorian novels and things like that, where you just kind of got to pretend or play or use your figures and try to make that happen. So while I do think it would be cool to find out, I love that it's just like another classic Star Wars trope of oh, there's a story in between the lines. We don't have time. You've got to focus over here because this is what's going on. And I love that, and selfishly wish they would just kind of let it go, because sometimes these things can never fill up our curiosity quotient, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes complete sense. And the other risk you run is you don't tell a story that's epic enough to explain
Right.
it in this
Absolutely.
situation. And I remember after this movie came out that you started getting some of the making of things that were being shared about the movie. And one of those is the original opening scene of this movie was the severed hand of Luke Skywalker holding this lightsaber floating through space, only to go through an atmosphere and crash on a planet, and the hand burns away and someone picks a lightsaber. I'm really glad we didn't get that. And
Thank
if it
goodness.
meant,
And
if that meant that we had to get this unanswered question in order to avoid that, then fantastic. But it just is a joke to me. I think that, she talks about this being a story for another time, and we've never had the other time, and it's been 11 years. So anyway, yeah. Jay, what do you think?
No, you guys make some really great points. And I have to say, I agree. I think that it's a great mystery that just needs to remain a mystery. And just the whole fact that when that showed up on screen, you're right, Dan. I mean, that particular lightsaber especially has been so mythologized, if that's even a word. But,
it is,
this
for sure.
movie breaks that expectation, because when Maz gives it to Finn, it's almost like it's a weapon in desperate hands at that point. It breaks that whole expectation of like, oh, it's the lightsaber kind of thing. And so then we get to kind of start a new journey with it, which brings all kinds of questions into our head when you're first watching this movie, like, oh my gosh, like, where is this going to end up now, kind of thing. So I thought that was a really cool way to do it.
Why do you two think she was so insistent that someone take up this lightsaber? Because she tried to get Rey to take it after the dream sequence, and now she's trying to give it to Finn, and Finn takes it. But we're gonna talk about another scene here in just a second where he's going about how he needs a weapon, and she's like, "You've got one. You use this to go help Rey and BB-8. They need your help." So there's some resistance on these characters' part to answering this call.
Dan, what do you think?
I think that Maz Kanata is force sensitive. She's not a Jedi, but she's in touch with the Force to a very limited degree. I also think that she's lived for a very long time. She knows about the past. She knows about the Galactic Civil War, and she knows that this is important to turn the tide. While it's arguable she's been out of this newer conflict, she knows what's going on. She's seen a lot of things on both sides, I'm sure. And so you have to get it out there. She's sort of like the invisible hand pushing the narrative forward, because we have to fight back. And this lightsaber, especially in this film, is such a symbol of combating evil. So yeah, you've got to use this weapon. Here you go. You got to take it, because it has to get into the right hands. And who that is, I'm sure she has no idea. But it can't stay locked up in a box, because you have to, like any talents or gifts or purpose that you have, you can't sit on it. You have to progress and advance and stick up against the great evil that is this invasion.
Okay, Jay.
No, I was just going to, I thought maybe you were going to say something. What I was going to say was similar to what Dan just said, in just that you had mentioned Maz being around for such a long time, and she's been this pirate queen, and she's seen people and been places and done things. And I mean, just a couple of scenes before this, she looked Finn in the eyes, and was like, I see people, kind of thing. So she probably did sense something in Rey, as you said, with her force sensitivity. And when Rey denied it, she saw something in Finn, whether it, was sensitivity or whatever. But you're right, she had to get it out there, because I think she knew that the inevitable was eventually going to happen, and people were going to be coming for her or her castle or, whatever. And that's exactly what happened.
Her line in the last segment was something along the lines like, when you've lived as long as I have, you see the same eyes in different people. And I see someone who wants to run. Love that. And then when Finn, leaves, says, we got to, you don't know who I am, and got to run from the First Order. And then Rey gets up to follow him, and Maz turns to Han and says, "Who's the girl?" It was always a suggestion that there was something about Rey, and
Yes.
so that she knew from the get-go. And so I could see, and especially when Rey had that vision, why she'd be interested in Rey taking up that lightsaber. But then giving it to Finn, I was like, well, does she see something in Finn, or she's just hoping that Finn gets it to Rey? But
That's my vote.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because at the time that this was made, the idea of Finn being somewhat strong in the Force, which I've never really liked, I don't think that existed then.
Right. Okay, so we get back to Rey. She's in the forest. She comes back upon Maz's palace, and she sees the First Order attacking it. The statue of Maz Kanata is destroyed as part of the palace tumbles down on top of it, and then Kylo Ren's shuttle arrives. If either of you have observations, I'll let you get them out here in just a second. But to me, it's what you've been saying earlier, Dan, which is that the visuals in this movie, the way that the castle starts to fall apart, the reveal of Kylo's shuttle as it kind of comes swooping in like a bat around the palace before it lands and just gorges Kylo, and he starts marching all over the place, are just absolutely incredible.
They are, and it's like the dream of remaining neutral and having your own safe place to land does not exist when someone is determined to disavow your rights to exist and to try to take over.
Any thoughts, Jay?
No, I think you guys hit everything that we needed to talk about there. So I think we can move on.
All right. So from there, Rey sees a couple stormtroopers. She pulls out her blaster. I love this. Pair this with her like getting the blaster and Han trying to tell her, she says, I can handle myself. I was like, I know you can. That's why I'm giving you the blaster. And how to use that thing. Well, you pointed at this. Is like a little bit more to it than that. And this is where that's coming out. She doesn't, she fumbles over like not releasing the safety.
On.
Yeah. And so, then the stormtrooper notices her and fires, and then she fires back, misses with the first shot, hits with the second. And then she looks at the blaster with this surprise on her face that this actually happened. And so some other stormtroopers approach, and she fires and runs away. This is a very action-packed segment of the movie here. I do love this little moment simply for what it tells us a bit more about, just kind of rounding out Rey. I don't know that it tells us a lot more about her character, but despite her abilities to do so many things, she knows how to pilot the Millennium Falcon. She's got skills as a scavenger. We see that she is handy in handling herself with her staff and everything else. That this is where she's got something to learn. So no matter how much everyone wanted to call her a Mary Sue back in the day, she was not, in fact, absolutely great at everything from the get-go. She had her blind spots. And I don't know, there's something adorable about this scene, for lack of a better word.
What do you think, Jen?
I have a question. Yeah, I have a question for you guys. After rewatching this again, I just noticed her obviously complete lack of hesitation. And obviously it was for survival instinct, but it didn't even faze her. And to your point, Dennis, I know, we said that she's very adept with combat skills and she can take care of herself and that type of thing. But pulling the trigger like that is on a different level. Mm-hmm. So do you think that she was just kind of almost in shock at that point? Or was her lack of hesitation really demonstrating emotional resilience or even possibly compartmentalization at that point? So Dan,
I love that. No, compartmentalization is sort of what goes through my mind too, because I haven't rewatched this film in a long time. For me, I don't, Star Wars is not a buffet for me. It's more like Thanksgiving. So when I get to it, I'm like, oh yay. Not that either way is the right way. It's just how my brain works. But when I watched this sequence, I could not remember. Had she killed anyone up to this point? Did she kill any stormtroopers when she's trying to escape Jakku?
Well, by association,
but not
Finn
like a
shoots down some
shot.
TIE fighters, but she didn't directly herself.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Okay, that's what I thought. So there's that part of me, and what Jay said really sort of supported what I was thinking. So thank you, Jay, for affirming me, even though you didn't even know what was happening.
Of course.
It's the teacher thing, right? Teachers just have that connection. maybe she's reacting to taking a life. I mean, this is the first time, maybe. I mean, she lives on Jakku or did. So Lord knows what she's had to deal with and things like that. And maybe it's not her first time, but it's personal when you shoot someone. I don't know from real life, thank goodness, but she shoots the stormtrooper. She missed the first time, hits him. And it's like, this is real. This is real stakes. I could die. Like I've been running and people are shooting at me. Yes, but seeing death, seeing someone die that I caused. I mean, I'm sure it's, as my son would say, Dad, it's not that deep. And he's probably right. But in that moment when she kind of freezes up, and then all of a sudden it's like the switch turns on. And as Jay said, this is about survival. This is about getting out of here. This is about my safety. And she runs off. But I was really moved by that scene when I rewatched it before today's show.
Yeah. It's an excellent question, Jay. For me, it is the other big action sequence of this movie is her running from the First Order with Finn. And they're being chased down by stormtroopers and then TIE fighters. The ship that they originally want to escape in gets blown up. The garbage will do, so they get on the Falcon and then they go on a desperate chase, which is my favorite scene of the entire movie. And they finally get away. And so she knows at this point, it might be a bit blunt to say it this way, but it's kill or be killed in this situation. The stormtroopers are not going to offer her any mercy. They're blasting down this palace right in front of her. So,
and it is again called Star Wars,
right? And her friends are in there. She cares for Finn. She cares for Han, and they're there as far as she knows. So, anyway, Kylo Ren is now marching around the palace, through the ruins of the palace, anyway. And then a stormtrooper reports that the droid was heading west with a girl, and I don't know why. To me, it seemed like he was reacting to with a girl, but he's been after this droid the entire time. And this is one of my disappointments with the entire sequel trilogy is that they tease the tech talking to him earlier in the movie about, the droid escaped, on a freighter. Oh, the droid stole a freighter. No, he had help with a girl. What girl? And now the droid is with a girl again. And so they're teasing some sort of recognition here. And they never pay that off. Not in this movie, not in a way that makes sense in The Last Jedi or The Rise of Skywalker. But I don't know. That's my personal gripe. Does any of that make sense to y'all? Stand out to y'all?
I've never felt that way. I see what you're saying, but I feel like it pays off because it's just planting little seeds of the fact that this girl is going to be important. There's a girl. Okay, so I have an idea. A girl stole the droid I need. Okay, that helps me identify. Maybe if I find this girl, I can find the droid because humans are more likely to leave clues than a droid is, right? And then when this TK unit brings that up, it's like, oh, okay, it's that girl again, right? Maybe I'm getting closer. And then, of course, the whole Rey thing. So unless I'm misremembering, which is very, very possible, I'm unburdened by memory. I don't know. I feel like it does pay off.
I see what you're saying makes sense. And I guess I just can't divorce this from the whole fact that J.J. Abrams is known for his mystery box. And the fact that he does not give Rey a last name in this movie is part of the deliberate mystery he's setting. And so when you get lines like this, I think he deliberately contributes to that type of mystery.
Well, which he does like to do.
Yeah. And so anyway, that's just my personal gripe with this.
No, that's fair.
But anyways, I've chimed in, Dan's chimed in. What do you think, Jay?
Well, I think it's very interesting that the use of the term girl is what's emphasized because Rey is not a little girl. Usually when someone is about that age, most people would refer to that person maybe as a young woman. Like I could see reports the droid was heading west with a young woman. Why girl? She's not that young. So I don't know. I'm hung up on that for some reason.
Well, it does kind of show there's like a very, very, very subtle hint of superiority. Oh, little girl. Or it could have, if it was a young man because of what this boy, it's like a way to condescend to someone because they're just a kid, right?
Mhm.
And what better archetype in children's literature than it's kids against adults, right? And Kylo Ren is very much trying to be like a big man, bigger than he actually is inside because he's so incredibly insecure. So it almost, I kind of like that he says girl because it shows that he's still trying to make up for the fact that he doesn't want to be a little boy, but he very much is.
Mhm. Or is it to
And his
convey
emotional
innocence?
maturity,
Yes, yes.
maybe,
And
but
I thought
Kylo
about that
Ren's.
too.
Do you mean like Kylo Ren's innocence? Is that what you mean?
No, raise innocence by
Oh
saying
yeah,
a girl,
yes, yes. Oh, I
Mhm.
agree. Perhaps,
Okay.
even though he's not thinking that nicely.
Right.
Well, the other aspect is I don't know that the First Order like refers to anyone by male or feminine pronouns or
Right,
labels. It's typically trooper, general,
right.
supreme leader, whatever. It's always titles in that
Titles,
way. And when
not
they start
people.
referring to Rey as girl, as you were saying, Dan, that is a way of diminishing her in that
Yes,
situation in a way that they wouldn't diminish themselves.
right.
So,
Let the grown-ups talk.
right.
Scavenger. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So we get back to Rey and she shoots another stormtrooper. And then
Yeah,
she
she's like
pauses.
trigger happy now.
And she's actually fairly accurate compared
It's
to most
very
people.
good.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've talked about the Mary Sue thing before, but I could. It's ridiculous.
Oh, that's a show into itself. So
It's like, yeah, well, you can have me on for that because I'll talk all about how anti-intellectual that whole argument is.
I will book you after the show for that
Yeah.
discussion. Okay.
There you go.
So where was it? Oh, so the point is that she pauses long enough to tell BB-8 to keep going, that she's going to try to hold them off. So she is being sacrificial in this regard because, as she said earlier, you're too important. She knows how badly the Resistance is going to need Luke Skywalker, so she believes. And so she's going to stay behind so that he can go. What do y'all think? We're getting very molecular in this discussion to a degree I did not expect for a segment that is so action-packed, but here we are.
Dan, go ahead.
I mean, sacrificial is a good word. Rey is continuing to show her selflessness and her bravery in the face of incredible adversity, and it just very subtly is, fanning the flame that is the burgeoning hero within.
Yep. I really don't have anything else to add to that. I think you're both right because she's done this from the very beginning. I mean, she could have had, all those portions and she looked at BB-8 and said, nope, droid's not for sale, so this is just another example of that.
And another example of Jay is good with impressions. She's done quite a
thank
few
you.
today. I'm always makes me happy. We already know you're good at cosplay, so why not? Why not be good at impressions too?
Oh, I
Going to
appreciate it,
Celebration
Dan.
LA,
Thank you.
Jay's Uncar plot cosplay. So, all right. So back at the palace, Han and Chewie emerge from the rubble and talking about how much you liked Harrison Ford as Han Solo in this movie. How cool was him making 3 shots, including the no-look shot, not missing a single one of them, not even breaking a sweat, to be followed up by Finn and Maz emerging, and then he says he needs a weapon, and she's like, you got one, and then she emphasizes the lightsaber, putting her hand on his arm. And then as Han and Chewie continue to finding more stormtroopers, Han asks to try the bowcaster again, which he got to use earlier in the movie, and it delivers an incredible shot, dealing a whole ton of damage. And then he classic Harrison Ford smirk. I like this thing. So anyway, I think we're gonna get through a lot here because this primarily is action here. But any of that stand out to y'all?
Well, for me, it's like, I think, is that really the first time that Han's ever used the bowcaster? They've been together for how long?
Right.
And that's the first time?
That's what I was
That's all
going to
I got.
say as well. It seems very hard to believe, but it's the first time for us to get to see him do it. So it's sort of like a nice little wink to the camera, which they use sparingly, which is a credit to Ford's acting, because when he does do that shot where he's not looking, I mean, he's always been a great shot. He's been doing it for a long time, but he doesn't wink. or kind of
Mhm.
smirk or do the bravado like he would have for the original trilogy. So there's like subtle indications that he's more quote mature. For Han Solo to be mature is funny to say, but he is, and it's just a good hero moment. It's just fun. It's fun for us Gen Xers or Zs or whatever we are. I lose track of that too. To see our boy doing his thing, and it's great. Seeing he and Chewie together is just fabulous.
Yeah, definitely so.
Agreed.
And then Finn gets his duel with the riot trooper, I think is what they're called. So
Yes.
the riot trooper recognizes him, calls him out as a traitor, pulls out his shock baton, mace. I've heard it called a bunch of different things.
Mhm.
And then they go head to head. The riot trooper gets the better of Finn as he's going in for the finishing blow. He gets blasted by Han again using the bowcaster, and Han helps him up and asks him, "You okay, big deal?" I love that.
Oh,
A
so
little bit of
great.
Han Solo bravado there. And then they promptly get captured by stormtroopers and their weapons are taken. So I hesitate to say this because I don't really want to pick on anyone, but I cannot see this scene anymore without thinking of the guy who went on social media claiming to be that riot trooper who filmed that scene with John Boyega. And it turned out the person who actually did it was a completely different ethnicity and not even close to being the same person. Anyways, I think it was Pablo Hidalgo who actually ended up calling him out on that one. But regardless,
I can see that.
yeah. Fun scene, and I think it lends a little bit of credibility to how dangerous the First Order is, especially in a hand-to-hand situation. But Jay, anything from that sequence stand out to you?
Well, I mean, it's obvious that this trooper recognized Finn. And I think that there was some kind of a side story to this at some point that talked about that and Finn's experience with being a stormtrooper and that type of thing. But I think what's really cool about the scene, other than the fact that it's got a lot of action and fighting, is just the fact that this baton is specifically designed for lightsabers. So how is that even something that is a thing when there are no more Jedi? And the only person that really is walking around with lightsaber at this point is Kylo Ren, other than now Finn. So I just thought that was very interesting that it could repel the lightsaber.
I thought it was like a riot baton.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think the side effect is that it's good against lightsabers, but I think it would be good against any type of charged or energy
Okay.
weapon.
Or any sort of like energy weapon or just something that you might encounter in a riot itself.
Okay.
What I like a lot about this is it's another cool hero moment, but I think more importantly, at least to me, that Finn uses the lightsaber because if you remember at Star Wars Celebration Anaheim in 2015, when they had all the costumes before we saw the movie, all we saw was that first trailer. Finn was seen with Luke's lightsaber. And I remember thinking, oh, I wonder what's going on here. But I never for a second thought that Finn was a Jedi. Still don't, by the way. And he, the fact that he uses it as a weapon, not as a lightsaber, it's like sort of like, are you a pitcher or are you a thrower? That's kind of what we're seeing here. And it's pretty cool because it just is like a blunt force object. There's the sequence where he impales. We've never seen a stormtrooper impaled before, which is pretty violent. And so that it shows that he can be a dangerous fighter, even though he's not a Jedi. He's using the weapon to survive. And it does show a history with the riot trooper. So that's pretty cool. But that's what I always got out of that was the fact that, okay, anybody can use a lightsaber. And it does set up nicely for the end where he ends up using the lightsaber again. But again, he's not force sensitive in this film. He just uses it as like a sword, essentially. So it's a nice little sort of a setup to what's going to happen later.
Indeed. I love the way you put that. I hadn't even thought about that. Using it as a weapon and not as a lightsaber. That's an important distinction when it comes, especially to Jedi. So
yes.
So we're running out of your time, Dan. So I want to bring up a couple segments and let you figure out. Let me talk about which one you want, and then Jay and I'll cover them after you have to run here. But the Resistance arrives with a great scene of them coming across the lake and taking on the First Order. We get to see Poe as an ace pilot. We then have Rey's confrontation with Kylo Ren in the forest, and then Kylo getting into Rey's mind, just figuring out that she's seen the map, leaving with her, and then the arrival of Princess Leia on the Resistance shuttle, and then the quote-unquote reunion with Han Solo with C-3PO intervenes in briefly. But of those final scenes in this segment, which one stands out to you that you want to talk about the most?
Oh, I mean, there's a good sequence. The Poe thing is fun just because he's sort of like he's not the Han Solo character, but he does fit that kind of bravado role. But that's about where the similarities end. Well, I guess being a good pilot. But when Kylo faces off against Rey, it's this experienced warrior, completely cloaked in black, with an innocent, essentially a rookie to this whole fight thing as far as against the First Order. And it's kind of predatory in a way because he's so scary. His voice is scary. And he makes her freeze where she can't move. And so it's a very scary thing. And it shows his arrogance. It shows his bravado, and it shows his incredible ability to use telekinesis in sort of a whole new way that we've ever seen before on screen. And so it stands out in the fact that he makes her go unconscious and he kidnaps her. And the way that John Boyega as Finn reacts is very effective. Han's clearly shaken for many reasons, but of course, mostly because it's his son, but also because Rey has just been kidnapped and he's fearful for what could happen. This new friend he's made, but the fact that it's his son, I'm very fortunate. we all have good kids, right? We all have kids we love, we trust, we know they make the right decisions. But imagine having someone like Kylo Ren as your child and seeing them kidnap someone. And in fact, all the other trauma that you've experienced, there's a lot of ache in this, and it's quickly kind of passed over because that's not what this movie is about. That's not the lens we're watching it through. But it's a really powerful emotional beat to tackle and still drive the action forward. And I think to do it very, very adeptly.
Indeed.
Great. Yeah, the whole thing with Kylo Ren using, and I looked this up because I wanted to know what the specific force skill was. It's called an advanced force stun that Kylo uses on Rey to knock her out. And apparently Count Dooku used this against Obi-Wan in Revenge of the Sith. I'm assuming when they were on the Invisible Hand.
He knocked Obi-Wan unconscious against the wall. So,
but I thought it was because he threw him against the wall.
Yeah,
it is. That is.
Yeah. And I guess Cal Kestis has used something similar as well. But Dennis and I have talked about how Kylo Ren is so, I don't know if the word is advanced with a lot of his force abilities, just like stopping the beam of the laser, the blaster, like with his hand, and not just stopping it, but letting it hang in the air while he's having a conversation with Poe, all of these things. And so he really is very intimidating in that way, for sure. Yes. And it's just, it's and very personal, like knocking her out and getting into her mind. And then the way that he was carrying her up the ramp is very reminiscent of some of the old horror movies, where you would see the damsel and the, just kind of knocked out kind of thing. But I have to say, this is some of John Boyega's best acting, I think, in the entire film right here. The desperation that he shows as he's running and then calling out her name, and sometimes people tease about that and they're like, all he ever says is Rey, kind of thing. But in this moment, you can feel it to your core. And it's just watching it again, I was just so impressed.
It would have been disingenuous if he didn't react that way. What I mean? Don't you think that when people critique like that, they've never acted before? I mean, the most acting they've ever done is when they're checking out a Target and there's the video and they're doing the self-checkout. That might be the extent of their acting prowess.
Oh, and they also aren't self-reflective to think about how they reacted to their most recent trauma. I mean,
exactly.
Exactly. We all aren't calm in the face of
these
type of things. All right. Well, Jay and I'll pick up this conversation in a bit, but Dan, I know you need to go, but I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you so much for coming back and visiting with us here on Podcast Stardust. I love getting your perspective on these movies, and you've been doing it for a long time over on Coffee with Kenobi, and you've been writing about it all over the place, whether it's been books, StarWars.com, and elsewhere. Why don't you remind everybody before you go where you can be found and what you're up to?
Well, thank you. I think one of the most important things about questions, about interviews, is the questions. And you two always come up with things that make me look at these movies and these sequences much more intently than I initially do. So thank you for inspiring me. And thank you for giving me this platform. I love talking to you both. You can find everything with me on coffeewithkenobi.com, all social media. You can find access to CWK Pro, which is our weekly Patreon show, which members of the CWK Alliance get access to. There's a video and an audio portion that's about all kinds of pop culture, not just Star Wars. The podcast Coffee with Kenobi comes out once a week ish. I sort of slow down here and there. But it's always fun to talk Star Wars, especially with people that you love and respect. So thanks, guys.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you, Dan. It's always great to have you on. It's like a little family reunion.
That's right. Can't wait to see everybody at Celebration.
Yes, indeed.
So thanks again to Dan for showing up and helping us out with this discussion. But we're going to continue on a little bit more detail about these final moments from this segment of the film. And we are at the portion of the movie, Jay, where the resistance arrives. And as an aside, for as much praise as we've been given J.J. Abrams and his crew for how visually well they put this movie together, there is a transition here that it jars me every single time. And that's right after Han and Chewbacca save Finn from that riot trooper. And then they get their weapons taken away. And then all of a sudden they're down by the lake is right before the resistance shows up. And I think it's because you go from being part of this, you go from being quiet to all of a sudden you hear TIE fighters in the air. And it just is, it's not a wipe. It's not a dissolve, which would not been appropriate at this point. But there's something clumsy about that transition. Have you ever noticed that, or is this just a me thing?
I don't think I have. And I think the main reason is because when you hear the March of the Resistance, that John Williams theme, that is one of my favorite themes in the whole
Yeah, but I'm talking before that.
Oh, like before?
Right. They're getting apprehended by the First Order, and then we see them basically with their hands behind their head.
Yes.
And this is right before all of a sudden you get the comm chatter that there's incoming forces, but it's that transition from them being captured. Then all of a sudden we see them right before the resistance shows up, and it's kind of an abrupt transition. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about this because
I guess
it's something that happens in a second. But anyway,
never really registered.
I hope I have not put that in your mind so that you don't notice it the way I do when you watch the movie next time. But at any rate, but all I have to say, it now precedes my second favorite scene in this entire movie, which is the arrival of the resistance here. You get that, you get the little bit of a chatter, they're being herded off as prisoners. And then the stormtroopers are starting about, hey, we got enemies coming in from wherever it is. They all start looking up off into the distance. And then you look across the lake and there's all these X-Wings coming in with the water spraying up behind them, the rooster tail type of effect. And the stormtroopers all take up a position and they call in for air support from the TIE fighters. And I'm just going to wax ecstatic about this scene for a second because I love it so much. And then we get Poe and Snap and Jess and then the rest of the crew. And Poe's like, go straight at them. Don't let these guys spook you. And like, we got you, Poe. And then the fight is on that. Yes. But the March of the Resistance kicks up the whole thing right there. Great music by John Williams, as you were just saying a second ago. Poe blasts 10 TIE fighters in a single run and takes out stormtroopers while he's at it. One heck of a segment in this movie.
Oh yeah. Well, and as Finn says, that's one hell of a pilot. I mean, that's just wow. And you could just see how Poe was just taking out so systematically, and it was just so surgical in that way. And it's just the music with the way that they came in is just like the cavalry has arrived, is the best way to put it. And it just brings back a lot of those feelings that you see in and those westerns and a lot of the other types of, war movies and things where it's like, oh, here come the heroes. This is awesome. So yeah. But did you notice too how I noticed this the very first time I watched the movie too, that the way that the stormtroopers were taken out with the walls being busted through and the way that not to be like graphic, but the way that their bodies fell. I mean, some of them were falling like head first, like face planting, but then their back was coming over. They were at unnatural angles. And I was like, wow, this is, it's not just like, kind of thing where they just kind of drop. This is like really, really intense stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, they're being hit by blaster fire from an X-Wing. It's like Chewie's bowcaster on set to 10 in that regard. Yeah. So they're really getting messed up there.
Exactly.
But the other thing I just want to say about this entire sequence here is that for as much as we like to get into like theories of the Force and then like the mysteries of things, we're just talking about J.J. Abrams' mystery box and like the twists and the philosophies and the symbolism and things like that. Sometimes you just need a great action sequence accompanied with awesome music from John Williams just to make your soul happy when you're watching Star Wars. And when I'm watching, we just had Dad talking about how he doesn't treat this buffet. Like, it's Thanksgiving. He sits down and he watches. I watch all these movies a couple times per year. And I will decide to start with release order or their episode or whoever it is and like that. And they're always on. And I may not be sitting down and watching every scene, but this is one of those scenes. And the escape from Jakku with the Millennium Falcon is the other one. When this happens, I am sitting down and I am paying attention to every detail because it just gets your bloods pumping. You get that adrenaline spike when you watch it. And it's one of the things I love about a good Star Wars movie.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. This is such a great scene.
Right. So coming down off the adrenaline, Rey is in the forest and she is now suspecting something is about to happen. We get her, I love the perspective they give us of this is that she's hearing different things, like different critters running around the forest. And all of a sudden she hears the hum of a lightsaber and she hears a yell. And so she starts backing off and she's trying to be stealthy as she's going around kind of that little ravine, that gully that's there in the forest. And then all of a sudden Kylo Ren emerges and she starts firing and he's deflecting the bolts or they're just missing him and he's driving her back. And then, she just starts shooting wildly. And then as you were talking about a second ago, he uses that force stun on her, knocks her arm back and then just freezes her in place and starts questioning her, the girl I've heard so much about. And this gets back to what I was saying earlier. The girl I've heard so much about, what have you actually heard, Kylo? You heard that a girl helped BB-8 escape from Jakku and that the droid was escaping with a girl. He's not heard so much about her. And so maybe I'm crediting this line with a little too much, but it really does suggest that there's some girl out there that Kylo has heard of or is looking for or, has talked to Snoke about or something. There's a bit more mystery behind it than just this, oh, there was a girl that helped out BB-8.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it could go that way, or maybe he was just being super sarcastic and like, oh, the girl I've heard so much about, like dismissing it almost.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, when you just pair all of this with the fact that there's a mystery around Rey's origins that everyone expected to hear the resolution of when we saw The Force Awakens, and then we didn't get it, that it just is kind of like, well, what are you telling us with this movie? So
yeah. Well, I have a question for you in this scene too. Do you think that Kylo Ren recognized his dad's DL-44 blaster in Rey's hand? I thought about that when I watched that this time, and I was like, "Ooh, I wonder if he."
Well, that's not Han's famous blaster. That's an extra blaster he had lying around that he gave to Rey. We've never seen it before this movie, so if it's shown up in another story, I'm not aware of it. But yeah, that would be something if he did. But he doesn't stick around long enough to even find out.
True. Yeah, and it wasn't his focus. I was just curious what you thought.
It's a good question, though. So he goes to read Rey's mind. and he determines that Rey has seen the map. And Rey is just like Poe early in the movie, you know, she's reacting to this experience with a certain degree of horror and discomfort and things like that. And I'll just say this, it's a point we made before that pet peeve of mine, this whole notion that Rey would have some sort of romantic interest in Kylo / Ben after this when he so violated her. I don't know if that's the right word in this case. Like, you know, he did the same thing to Poe. And there's even Charles Soule wrote, was it one of the Poe Dameron comics, or was it Charles Soule? Someone wrote a comic that takes place after the Force Awakens or after The Last Jedi, when Rey and Poe meet and they're having a conversation, and Poe makes a joke. I hope it's a joke, but it's like, you know, we're torture buddies or whatever, because they both went through this same experience with Kylo Ren.
Mhm.
It's invasive. It's, you know, I don't even know how to properly put this into words, but I mean, we wouldn't tolerate this anywhere here.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure that this always gets the attention it deserves for how inappropriate, unlawful an act it really is.
Yeah, and it would be the same for, you know, anyone. I don't care if it was
Mhm.
male or female, obviously Poe or Rey. But I think the whole notion of the Reylo thing comes
Mhm.
in, it's almost like a Beauty and the Beast sort of mentality. You know what I mean? Is that I think that's where that origin might come from.
I understand, and I get that this fascination is more of a superficial one as opposed to a deep one when it comes to that relationship there, that,
Mhm.
you know, opposites attract, dark and light, that type of thing, and I get it. But it goes along with the same argument that, you know, the whole possibility when we read the Infinities comics, and spoiler, the end of Return of Jedi, where instead of dying, Darth Vader had, you know, saved Luke, and now he's working with the Rebel Alliance to track down the Emperor. This is the same guy who you know, complicit in blowing up planets and murdering thousands of people across the galaxy. It's not plausible to think that everyone is just going to say, oh, you know, it's not wrestling. It's not professional wrestling where you're a heel one week and then you're a baby face good guy the next week. You know,
Right.
these actions have consequences. And so that's just what bothers me, is that there seems to be, in the storytelling of these movies, and sometimes when the fandom is like, I don't think it's realistic to expect that just all's forgiven
Right.
because he's decided to turn over a new leaf after doing. This is not the only thing he does. I mean, he murders Lor Santeca. He orders the stormtroopers to kill all the villagers at the beginning of this movie. And there's, you know, he's complicit in the destruction of Hosnium Prime and everything else
Mhm.
that happens. And so, all right, I've gone off on a diatribe, but so we need to get on with the conversation. But this is just Kylo Ren is not a good guy. I don't care what the circumstances were that may not have been all his fault to cause him to leave. He's still making decisions in this regard,
Right.
and I think he needs to be held accountable for it.
Yeah, he's a big boy. He should be.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So Kylo's now invaded Rey's mind. He knows that she's seen the map. He can use that. He no longer needs to deal with the droid. He gets the reports that the First Order, or the Resistance, I should say, has shown up, and so they withdraw. And this was the scene Dan was talking about with Kylo carrying Rey off to the ship. I think it's very much like vampire, like carrying his prey away type of
Yep.
thing. Finn calls
Definitely.
after Rey. Anything else you want to say about that? Because I'd like to talk a bit more about Princess Leia's arrival, unless you have thoughts on those that we haven't talked about yet.
Let's talk about Leia.
All right. So we see this transport, very interesting shape. The cockpit's on the side. That must be a pain to fly. But then it's coming in for landing. Han's marching right towards it after seeing Kylo carry off Rey. And as Finn's running up to him saying, you know, they took her. He's like, yeah, I know. And then he comes to a dead stop before this ship as it lands. It does so. It opens up the front door. Resistance fighters come out. And then we see Leia. She's giving instruction to someone. And then she sees Han and stopped dead in her tracks. And they have like the faintest glimpses of a smile on their faces. And then 3PO interjects. Yeah.
Of course
Han
he does.
Solo. It's me, C3PO. You probably don't recognize me because of the red arm. I love all the names that came out of that, for a brief time where no one could recognize 3PO, or they'd paint part of anything red and then no one could tell what it was anymore.
You
But
can recognize it.
and then we get the banter light version for Han and Leia. It's the you changed your hair, same jacket. No, new jacket. But then before Chewbacca comes in for the hug with Leia, and then Han turns it serious. I saw him, Leia. I saw our son. He was here. So that's the scene of the reunion. What do you think?
Oh my gosh. Well, just sitting there in the theater watching this transpire, this is the first time that they've shared a screen or a scene, in decades. And one thing that I think The Force Awakens does in general is that it weaves in a lot of this original trilogy nostalgia with the new generation stuff, obviously. So there's just so much happening beneath the surface. And so when they have this little banter, you changed your hair, same jacket. No, new jacket. Those of us, that grew up with the OT and were such big fans of it and see this reunion, it's very bittersweet. And there's so many things that have been unsaid, and why are they not together, and what is going on with the two of them. And obviously Han's been gallivanting around the galaxy with Chewie, and it just hurts your heart. But yet when Han says, I saw him, I saw our son, that just, having kids, having boys, especially, it wasn't, I saw Kylo Ren, I saw this terror, I saw our son.
Mm-hmm.
And that just pulls at your heartstrings. And every time I see the scene, and especially with Leia's theme in the background, it just hits me where I live.
Yeah. And it's all the better because Han is carrying some sort of guilt for everything that happened this entire time. And 15, 20 minutes earlier in this movie, he's shown up at Maz Kanata's palace and he's sitting at a table eating a meal with her and Rey and Finn. And when they explain what they need, Maz says, no, Han, you can do this. Go home. Mm-hmm. And he's like, Leia doesn't want to see me. And I think what this actually says is that it's not that Leia doesn't want to see him. It's he's afraid of facing her because he's carrying guilt about what happened with Ben in this situation. But now there's no getting away from it. There was this fight. He can't run off to the Falcon and take off. The Resistance would notice that. And so he confronts it head on. And when you said bittersweet at the beginning of your response to this thing, I think that's exactly right. It's just kind of like, why couldn't you have done these? You two done this earlier? It's, so much lost time, and it's not really a theme in this movie. But when we're examining it in these segments, you can see it. They've lost a lot over all of this.
Sure have.
Yeah, and so they get together, and you can now retrospectively see the relief that they've been able to have this meeting again and kind of start that beginning of reconciliation. It's not going to last long, as we know, for
right
by the end of this movie. But at any rate, but yeah, I'm with you. We have such a history with these characters that goes back decades. Getting to see them here in the next few scenes is good. It's good for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, and that brings us to the last portion of this segment of The Force Awakens, and that's the return to the Resistance base on Dakar. I could have sworn this base had a name, but when I looked it up, everything just told me it's called the Resistance base on Dakar. It's like, okay, fair enough. But so they're flying to Dakar. They go past that planetary ring. Again, amazing visuals here. And they land at RAF Green and Common, which is the name of the Royal Air Force Base in England where this was filmed, which was also used in Andor Season 2. So that's where we most recently seen it. Saw Gerrera and his partisans had set up shop there for a while. The X-Wings land. There's lots of activity. I giggle every time I see this, but there's two pilots in red jumpsuits. They go running, and then they go running off screen like to nowhere. if you just watch him at the beginning of the scene, they're urgent and they go, there's a path, they go running off of it, but there's no base back there. So they look busy. Good for them. And then we see Finn noticing Poe's getting out of his X-Wing. BB-8 goes tearing past him. Poe notices him. They have a reunion, and then Poe and Finn reunite, and Poe is just showering praise on Finn for finishing his mission, talking about how, I woke up, you were gone, the ship was gone, everything was gone, and then again, you finished my mission. Hey, that's my jacket.
That's such a great.
And then he tells him to keep it. You're a good man. So, anyways, I've given all the details of the scene. What stands out to you about it?
I just think that this whole relationship between Poe and Finn is just one of the best. I really do. And I know that I've oftentimes teased about the bromance, between the two of them. But I mean, you think about it, and Poe really did help Finn establish his new identity, if you will. He gave him his name. I'm not calling you FN2187. That's not a name. We're going to call you Finn,
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that him like letting him keep his jacket is also very symbolic in a way that, he's now part of them.
Mm-hmm.
He has now been kind of accepted into the family, so to speak. But and just the fact that the two of them just had so much, affection and camaraderie for each other right away in seeing each other that way. I love this scene. I truly do.
Well, they had a very intense introduction to each other,
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of enemy territory, and Finn helps Poe escape when he was still FN2187. And, the
Mm-hmm.
whole like, you got this, stay calm, you got this. I am calm. I'm talking to myself, and it also helps. I just read the Last Order book. And so kind of getting some of Finn's background there, but and then, it's dramatic circumstances. They're on a TIE fighter blasting away in a hangar, and then they're escaping from other TIE fighters and other blasters on a Star Destroyer, and then they crash on a planet. So getting to see, that reunion there is really, really cool. So I love the scene. I love the chemistry between these two characters. It reminded me, just a couple years ago, there was all those rumors going around that John Boyega had been approached about a film, and he was talking about, and then there was like, oh, and it's going to be with Oscar Isaac reprising his role as Poe. And I'm like, where's this movie? We totally need this.
Right.
And, I want to see it. I want to see The Hunt for Ben Solo. I want to see this. Give Rey her movie, and let's go with the next trilogy of movies, or post Rise of Skywalker. I don't care. Let's go. Let's do it. But
right. While we can, you mentioned that too. While they're still young enough to do it, and while their characters are still, I'm not that they're ever not going to be relevant, but you know what I mean.
But
they're in that age,
right? It's only been 7 years since the Rise of Skywalker. They could have an older, more age-appropriate mission as the leaders of the galaxy. Rey as the custodian of the Jedi. Mm-hmm. Poe as the leader of whatever the Republic military is. Finn is, you can come up with whatever. I mean, he could still be in the military with Poe. He could have all kinds of, he could be part of that entire effort to find out what happened to these displaced stormtroopers and getting them reunited with their families. And or he, as much as Dan doesn't want to see it, he could be Force sensitive and working with Rey in the Jedi Temple. I mean, he could be a liaison between all of that. Mm-hmm. But there's no reason why you can't tell these stories. Make it happen.
I know. It would be great.
I'm really hoping, I know you and I have talked about it this week. This is going to be coming out on, this episode is going to be out on July 29th. And so we'll have had Comic-Con at this point. I'm not expecting any movement announcements or thing, but D23 is in August. There's some potential for announcements there. And then we got Celebration next year. I'd really love to hear that there is another movie that's greenlit and in production at that point. And if they want to involve any of these characters, so much the better.
Oh, yes. Please make it so.
Because we just don't know what's happening after Starfighter. So
Right.
Well, but that's another episode that we need to get on the books, as well as Dan's Mary Sue discussion. So coming soon to Podcast Stardust. And by soon, we're using that loosely like they do in the movie theaters. All right.
Right.
That will do it then for this segment of our Force Awakens series for the year. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we do appreciate you joining us here on Podcast Stardust as we worked our way through it. And special thanks again to Dan Zehr for joining us. Make sure you go check him out on Coffee with Kenobi. We have a lot of crossover, so I'm sure most of you are listening to him already. But if you haven't, go check it out. He's got a lot of great guests and does a lot of great things. If you've enjoyed this, we would hope you consider subscribing to the show if you have not done so already. We appreciate it when you rate, review, like, comment on the show on your podcatcher of choice. And then I'd invite you to head over to retrozap.com to check out all the back episodes, all previous 1,063 of them, as well as all the other great shows that are on the network. Jay, you want to go ahead and remind everybody where we can be found on social media again and where else we can be found online?
Sure can. So just want to say a quick hello there to any new listeners out there, because I know I've had a few friends and family that said that they've been tuning into the episodes. And so you can connect with us very easily on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust and share that out with your friends as well. And we do have our Pinterest boards that we maintain for all kinds of fun ideas for everything Star Wars. And then you can also listen to all of the episodes over on YouTube and YouTube Music. So we don't do video, just audio. But once again, you can sign up for the subscription and you'll get our full catalog of shows. And you can also get in touch with us through email. So especially if you have something that doesn't fit super neatly into social media comments and the like, you can email us at podcaststardust@gmail.com. And last but not least, if you want to pick up some Podcast Stardust merch, we do have a store that has all of our show merch, and the link to that is in our show notes for TeePublic.
So upcoming on the show on this Friday, the current plan is to get into news. Hopefully we'll have something from Comic-Con to discuss. And then on Monday, it'll be the next installment in our Clone Wars rewatch. So until then, thanks for listening to episode 1064 of Podcast Stars. Everyone, have a great rest of your week. And until next time, may the Force be with you.